Buddy Lance, Russell, and Dave Brown right along ringside. By golly, we're about ready to go with more big action.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Georgia Championship Wrestling. I'm Gordon Sawyer, your host, and we have quite an hour in store for us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Championship Wrestling at ringside. This is Vince McMahon, along with wrestling's only living legend, Bruno Sammartino.
Welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce, another outstanding card.
Hey, guys, and welcome back to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories. We are indeed back in action here, just in time for the holiday season. I am Ray Russell, and last we left you, we were meeting with Bota the Witch Doctor there as part of Memphis 1985 and Gene Jackson, and then we took our little sabbatical, or hiatus. More on that in the weeks to come. Stay tuned to the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Got a lot of things to say, a lot of updates to give, but right now this week, I just wanted to jump back into things and have a great time. And what better way to do that than to bring Jammie Ward onto the program here this week. And Jammie's going to be back in just a moment as we continue to tell the story of Georgia Championship Wrestling in 1982. Last we left you, we were closing out the month of March. Got a couple days left in March as we move into the month of April. And due to the sporadic video footage that exists of the next few weeks of TV, we put a couple of them up there on my youtube.com/wrestlinggrenade. I feel like we're going to have time to get through 3 weeks of Georgia this week, which means at least one, if not two, Omni cards, plus 3 episodes of Georgia Championship Wrestling right there at 6:05 with Gordon Soley and Rod Piper. But in order to do all of that, let's bring the man back onto the program, my co-host here for the Georgia story. Here he is, the one and only. Welcome back, Mr. Jammie Ward.
Yeah, it has been forever, Ray. It feels like it's been so long since you and I have gotten together for Georgia Championship Wrestling. It feels like 1982 all over again. That's how far and long it's been since we have conversed about this subject.
Yeah, you know, I had to go back over my notes for everything I've started to jump back into because I really, you know, it's a lot of it's refreshing. You know, it's coming back to me, but I really offered me $1 million, I would have tried my heart out to remember what I had done research on last. But man, it was really hard to try to remember everything. And luckily, we have these lovely show notes in front of us here, and that brought me back to where I was, say, a month and a half ago. And so it's great to be back. It's great to have you back, and it's great to be back in 1982 with Georgia Championship Wrestling. I was just explaining to the listeners out there that there's no TV for the first week here that we're going to be covering. No footage that I know of that exists. So we should be able to tackle 3 weeks of Georgia this week. So I'm looking forward to that. But before we get to the new month of April, we do have a few days left here in the month of March. And so we're going to go back in time to March the 27th, Saturday night, Chattanooga, Tennessee, Jammie. Memorial Auditorium. Going to see Ted Oates over Ricky Harris. Tom Pritchard scoring a win over Chick Donovan. Kevin Sullivan over Jerry Oates. Brad Armstrong battling Buzz Sawyer to a no contest. North American champion Outlaw Ron Bass over Bad Leroy Brown. Wait a minute, that's national champion. Did I say North American? See, I've already lost it. And the main event, Dragon Shy match, Great Kabuki defeating the Bullet, Bob Armstrong.
That's a little surprising result, but hey, they got to put Kabuki over here and there so that he stays strong. Again, the match of the night had to be young Brad Armstrong against, a guy who's still pretty young in his own right, Buzz Sawyer. At this point, he hasn't developed into the Mad Dog yet.
Not yet, but he's slowly working his way there, as we've seen here in the year of 1982. He's certainly on his way. That's for certain. As we continue on the following day, a couple of shows here in Columbus, Ohio. First of all, Ohio Center, Gino Hernandez battling Brad Armstrong to a draw. I believe this might be Gino's last time through the company, if I remember correctly. Also, Buzz Sawyer over Tom Pritchard, tag team champions Super Destroyer and John Studd defeating Terry Taylor and Leroy Brown. Roddy Piper over Bob Armstrong by DQ. And Wildfire Tommy Rich scoring a disqualification victory over the Great Kabuki. Pretty fun little card there in Columbus.
Yeah, they got their money's worth again. And once again, I said Gino wasn't going to come back 6 weeks ago, and here Gino's still floating around. But I think you're right. We're just about to the end of Gino. It might be the last time, or last date anyway, that he works.
Well, he did say he would come back to Georgia without getting paid. What was it, like triple the money anybody ever made in the entire company, which was never going to happen because Ole was running things and Ole was going to make some money. And some of these other guys that come through, Dusty and Flair and Andre, would have something to say about that. But it's funny that Gino does work a few Columbus, Ohio shows rather than work any of the Omni card. We saw him in the Omni, but he's worked here in Columbus a few times, it seems like. And I think we're pretty much at the tail end of Gino's little run here, unfortunately. But every day they work in Columbus. They also seem to work in Huntington, West Virginia later in the evening. Memorial Fieldhouse, also March the 28th. Gino still in town, defeating Tom Pritchard. Buzz Sawyer over Brad Armstrong this time. Big John Studd. Wow, talk about a contrast in styles and size. John Studd over Little Terry Taylor. Leroy Brown defeating Super Destroyer by DQ. In a main event tag team action, Tommy Rich and Bob Armstrong scoring a win over Roddy Piper and the Great Kabuki.
Well, Studd against Taylor might not have been that horrible. I mean, these guys, they were in Knoxville together. They were in Mid-Atlantic together. So maybe their paths have crossed a few times. And even though as bad as Studd was at this point, maybe Taylor carried him to a good match.
Yeah, Studd was already slowly on the decline, though he hadn't gotten there yet. That's still coming up in New York. But I didn't say it would be a bad match. I just said a very big contrast in size and style. Terry's still, he's only a couple years into the business, and Studd is on his way, not out of the business, but out of a working format anyway in his body. He's already starting to get there. I don't know if he's already on something, but Big John Studd, it's just it leaves a lot to be desired for me.
Yeah, well, he's still a little slender at this point.
True.
And like you said, when he gets to the WWF,
it's all downhill.
You would have thought he had lead in his boots at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
We know he had lifts in the boots, but
he needed
had lead lifts.
He needed lead lifts because he didn't want to be slammed. He wanted to keep that $15,000. See, it was all a gimmick.
That's true. I didn't think of that. Good one, Ray. I like that.
I'm thinking I'm a heel thinking man or something like that. I don't know. Anywho, we're going to go on to the following day, March the 29th. Couple of shows here. I don't have results for Logan Fieldhouse, Logan, West Virginia, but I do have results for Augusta, Georgia, Bell Auditorium, March the 29th. Going to see Jerry Oates over Ricky Harris, Kevin Sullivan defeating Ted Oates, Sherry Martel, hey, the sensational Sherry, scoring a win in a ladies' battle royal. Also featuring Susan Mitchell, Donna Christianello, Judy Martin, very familiar name there, and recently departed Sabrina, who just passed away several weeks back. So Sherry Martel scoring a win, and I believe she's just breaking into the business in 82.
Right. She's not far away from Jim Cornette becoming her manager.
So it just shocked me to see her going over here when we have Donna Christianello, who's a longtime veteran at this point, Judy Martin, who'd already had some seasoning as well. But I'm not familiar with Susan Mitchell. She may have just been pulled in off the street for all I know. But Sherry Martel, it was cool to see her name here. She scores a win in a battle royal there in Augusta. As we move on March the 30th, I don't have the entire card, but I do have a headline match of all ages. Lansing, Michigan, of all places, is going to get Roddy Piper versus the Mac and Dream, Dusty Rhodes, coming to these new towns, Jamie, up in Michigan, and they bring the big guns. Roddy Piper versus Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, because Piper's just in the beginning of work in the Georgia territory, I guess.
Yeah, it's fun to see him starting to branch out beyond the Omni, seeing Piper here. But man, what a match. I don't know that I've ever seen a Roddy Piper Dusty match. That would have been fun.
Yeah, I know I haven't. Off the top of my head, I've never seen the two of them.
You got to watch out for that elbow, man. That's a hell of a little, headliner there, just randomly throwing that out there. Dusty comes to town, works up there. Dusty's doing a lot of favors for Georgia right now, which keeps him in the good graces of the NWA. He's working a lot of those northern shows for the company, and I'm sure he's getting paid well, splendidly there. Also on that card was Ray Stevens coming in, taking on Buzz Sawyer. I don't have the results, nor do I have any of the other matches, but announced Piper versus Dusty, and I'm there. I don't need to know the undercard, so I'm good with that one.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to see Stevens listed. If he's fighting Sawyer, that means he's a babyface. So
right.
When we last saw him in Georgia, he was one of Mephisto's heels. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Ray Stevens as we go forward here, and if he's staying around or not.
It will indeed. Well, we have a couple more shows. We're doing the North and the South tours right now at the same time, so kind of a split roster, which is why we're going to see a few of the preliminary guys and the Oates brothers more involved in the upcoming weeks. March the 31st in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I don't have results, though it seems like Piper was on that tour, so a little more Roddy Piper, Buzz Sawyer up there. Then down the Southway, Columbus, Georgia, March the 31st, Municipal Auditorium, Jerry Oates over Bobby Garrett, Ted Oates defeating Chick Donovan, Leroy Brown teaming with Brad Armstrong over Super Destroyer and Rick Harris. It's Ron Bass, national champion, over Bob Armstrong. and Kevin Sullivan battling Buzz Sawyer to a no contest. Remember, last we left, the alliance between Sawyer and Sullivan is no more. They didn't really explain it, but apparently Sullivan's going the way of the baby, and Buzz Sawyer is playing that nasty heel.
Yeah, and this is the stop before Kevin Sullivan turns into the devil.
The devil baby. That's what the devil made me do it. He had the wolf in sheep's clothing here.
What's interesting here, Ray, is that we see that Buzz Sawyer has left the Northern Tour and now has joined the Southern Tour.
Oh, that's a good call, Jamie. Absolutely. So, yeah, they've moved him around. He already got kicked out of Michigan, is what I'm telling myself anyway. As we continue on, April the 1st, going to finish up this week's North Tour in Saginaw, Michigan at the Civic Center. Tom Pritchard battling Kevin Sullivan to a draw, giving Tom some elevation there, battling Sullivan to a nice clean-cut opening draw. Leroy Brown battling Super Destroyer to a no contest, battle of the big guys. Buzz Sawyer back up to Michigan over Brad Armstrong. Bob Armstrong over Ron Bass by disqualification. Main event, more tag team action. Dusty Rhodes teaming with the Wildfire, Tommy Rich, two former world champions over Great Kabuki and Big John Studd.
I mean, this doesn't make a lot of sense here. They had just sent Sawyer back down to Michigan, and now they back down to Georgia, and now they're sending him right back up to Michigan again, along with Kevin Sullivan and the Armstrongs and the Super Destroyer. They're kind of, wearing their guys down and paying some airfare there.
Yeah, they're figuring it out, obviously, at this point. I mean, who's still in charge of the airfare money, my boy? I would have to imagine this early in 1982. So I'm sure that's going to get fixed over time, the finances. But we continue on. April the 3rd, this is the episode of TV I had mentioned that I can't seem to find any footage of this particular episode. So I don't know what was going on with Harold Strassler that day, but it's been a while, so I have to say, damn you, Harold.
There must have been something good on Florida wrestling that he had to wipe the Georgia tape out. That's the only thing I could figure.
It's got to be.
But you're right, damn Harold.
Damn it, Harold. So April 3rd TV, though, we do have results, so we can at least see some of the matches that took place. Gordon Solie and Rod Piper, you have to imagine, were the hosts per the usual. On the show, it's Buzz Sawyer over Rick Thor. Jimmy Rice scoring a win over the Great Kabuki by disqualification. You have to imagine Kabuki got a little overzealous there. Tommy Pritchard over Ricky Harris. Eddie Mansfield, Continental Lover, the man that exposed the business, one of many. Eddie Mansfield coming into town, scoring a win over Mike Jackson. Ole Anderson teaming with his tag team partner Stan Hansen, scoring a win over Bob McKenzie and Alan Tupperella. Love saying that name. Brad Armstrong over Chick Donovan. Can't get enough of that match. Buzz Sawyer over Mike Thompson. Wildfire Tommy Rich defeating the future Black Bart, Ricky Harris. National champion Ron Bass over Bob McKenzie. And this is interesting. John Studd's not here, so we get Super Destroyer teaming with a guy by the name of the Assassin, the Assassin, if you will. I don't know if it's Jody Hamilton. I'm not sure if it's Nick Patrick. I'm not sure who this is because we don't have footage, but it's the Assassin and Super D over Mike Jackson and Rick Thor. What sticks out to you here? I saw Eddie Mansfield coming to town. I see this Assassin character. I don't know if you have any memories from way back when, if you can verify.
Yes, I do actually remember this show because I don't believe we see Mansfield again after this. And it popped at me at that time because last time I had seen Mansfield before this, he was in Florida, I guess, right? In 80 or 81. So I was surprised to see him pop up. But as we saw happened a lot on TBS, guys just came in for one shot and never seen again. Now, the Assassin, I believe, again, that was probably Randy Cully or Roger Smith at the time. Just from the best of my memory, there was some blonde hair peeking out from under the mask, and I don't remember them doing an interview.
Okay.
On that particular show. So if the Assassin isn't speaking, it wasn't Jody. Because Jody always had to get his microphone time in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If he was going to come to TV, he was going to talk. And rightfully so. He was a hell of a promo. But it just seems odd like that. It just seems like peculiar that you would use Jody Hamilton in that role as just kind of a throwaway here to replace John Studd anyway. I don't think he would just be in town for that. So I'm going to go with Randy Colley. I think we've seen that before. I think we saw him pop up as the Assassin one time back in the summer or something of 81. He did a fill-in job. So it's possible.
It was the Christmas night show.
Oh,
where
that's
he teams up with Superstar and Super Destroyer.
Okay, well, that would make sense because we're going to do something with that here moving forward, I believe. And in regards to Eddie Mansfield, I did cheat. I read my notes last night, so I know we're going to see Eddie's name again. Not for long, though. So he may stick around another week or so. But right now he is just kind of another name passing through the territory, it would appear. He's being given a shot. And, I said Jim Rice over Kabuki by DQ. I theorized maybe Kabuki just, went into business for himself. But we could have also seen a Bob Armstrong run in, or many things could have happened there. So who knows what the situation is. If anybody has any notes, result notes, because, I've had some people come to me with the notes, results that they wrote down way back when this footage aired, Mid-South and beyond. So if anybody has anything on this show, please send it in. And Jamie, if anything else clicks with you on this episode, we'll come back to it. As we continue on, though, we go back to the house shows. April the 4th, going to see a pair of shows. The first being in Rome, Georgia, earlier in the day, Memorial Gym. On the card was Ricky Harris versus Tom Pritchard, Kevin Sullivan versus Brad Armstrong. Look at this one. Buzz Sawyer versus Terry Funk. Whew, that had to be something.
Oh, yeah.
And the main event of the night was the tag team champions, John Studd and Super Destroyer, taking on Tommy Rich and Dick Slater. Another fun tag team match, but I got to go back. I know he's still young, but Buzz Sawyer and Terry Funk, something about that match, man. I would have loved to have seen that one.
Oh, I'm tingling inside right now just thinking about what that probably looked like at the time.
What could we have done there? And, you notice no Dusty, no Terry Funk in those results for TV, which is commonplace. But they have a big match upcoming here on April the 4th in the Omni, so you have to believe we got some great promos out of those two, I hope, in regards to this Omni show, which we're getting to right now, April the 4th, in the Omni in Atlanta. Brad Armstrong defeating Ricky Harris, Kevin Sullivan taking Tom Pritchard to a draw. Big 6-man tag. They were promoting this in the last episode we covered, Jamie. It was Michael Hayes. Oh, well, Michael Hayes returning to town. Jamie was begging Daddy. Let's go on down. Let's watch this show.
That's right.
Live
I want to go see Michael Hayes, Dad. Come on, let's catch a flight.
He may never come back. He's been gone for a few months. Michael Hayes returns inexplicably to team with Bad Leroy Brown in Mr. Wrestling 2. Has there ever been such a I don't want to say odd couple, odd trio?
Yeah, that's definitely oddballs right there.
That is lethal lottery 6-man tag teaming all day long. The team of Hayes, Leroy Brown, and Wrestling 2 over Super Destroyer, the Assassin, and Ricky Harris. So here's the notes, because we talked about this on the last regional wrestling we did together. This match originally was slated to see Hayes, Brown, and 2 take on John Studd, Super Destroyer, and Buzz Sawyer. Remember the promo they cut about, you're in the big leagues now, boy, Buzz. You're here with all, 5 established wrestlers, and it's time to make your name. So peculiar, because again, we don't have the TV. I don't know if they set something up that pulled Buzz from this show, because he was on the house shows the night before and the night after. So I'm not sure why he's not here, but he's replaced by the Assassin, who was on TV. So it seems like that was kind of planned by the time they got to TV. Also, Ricky Harris, Black Bart, subbing for a missing in action John Studd, who was also on the house shows the day before. Really interesting.
Oh, maybe Buzz and John Studd got in a car accident or something.
It's always something, I don't know. This is not the first time Studd has missed an Omni card, I've noticed, though.
Maybe he didn't like Atlanta. Maybe there was a baby mama sitting out in the audience.
Oh,
he didn't
no.
want to face.
Yeah, I'm not going out there. There's only one thing I fear, and that's those baby mamas sitting in the crowd, man. Oh, my goodness, Jammie Ward. And the Assassin, so he comes in and he replaces Buzz. Now, again, Buzz was on the TV. He was on the house show the night prior, the night after. So I'm not sure what happened with the Mad Dog either, but he is not here. He didn't get to fulfill his commitments in these to come in and fight with the big dogs, if you will, the 6-man tag. But the baby faces do go over. It's Hayes, Brown, and Wrestling 2 over the Assassin, Super D, and Ricky Harris. And with 2 of the 3 originally announced team members out, I would imagine that the right team went over there. National Heavyweight Champion Outlaw Ron Bass scoring a win over the former champion Tommy Rich in his rematch. They had billed that as Rich's last chance, so we'll have to see if that actually takes place or not. Dick Slater back in town to take on Roddy Piper, and it is Slater scoring a win over Roddy, Hot Rod, by disqualification. Piper losing his cool, getting DQ'd here. I don't know if it was Kabuki run in. I don't know what the deal was, but Dick Slater going to get the DQ victory. And the return match, bunkhouse match, Dusty Rhodes holding the watch of the father of one, Terry Funk, Dory Funk Sr., for the rematch. But it is, again, Ole and Stan Hansen scoring another victory over Dusty Rhodes and Terry Funk, this time in a bunkhouse match.
If it was a clean pinfall, you got to be guaranteed Terry Funk did the pin because Terry Funk didn't care.
No, he didn't. And especially when he was in there with guys like Stan Hansen and whatnot. Terry was, he pretty much did whatever was asked of him. He came in and he was a headliner and he got paid and he left. And that was pretty much Terry's, and I'm sure he told a few jokes in between and probably had a little fun during this match.
And there's nothing that's going to hurt the Terry Funk reputation.
No, absolutely not. We got one more match of the show. It was Bob Armstrong battling the Great Kabuki to a no contest. If you remember, Jamie, this was the story they were telling where Gary Hart was, quote unquote, barred from the building. But Roddy Piper said, I'm going to buy you an entire row of seats, Gary Hart. You can come on down to the program. Now, I don't understand that because, if you're barred from the building, you're not allowed in the building. But Piper kept selling it like he's going to buy Gary a ticket. So did Gary show up in the crowd? Did he interfere? I'm not sure what the story was, but no contest there between the Bullet and Kabuki, which leads me to believe there's a rematch around the corner of some form. So hell of a show. You got Ron Bass and Tommy Rich, your local storyline. You got Dick Slater coming to town with Roddy Piper. Ole and Hansen, who are pretty much world beaters and wanting to be the world tag team champions right now against two of the greatest in history. Dusty and Terry Funk teaming up, which is just crazy to think about to begin with. And then you got another local story going on, the beloved hero, Bob Armstrong and Kabuki. So that was a hell of a top-notch card, the top 4 matches on the show.
And it's pretty neat that Slater's coming in because I think you told me he's booking Southwest at this point.
Yes. Yeah.
So he's leaving his towns on important weekends.
Well, as long as these Omni cards are falling on Sundays that they're not running the Hemisphere, which they might have run the Hemisphere on Saturdays. I don't remember off the top of my head right now because we've been covering that too. But as long as they're not interfering with that, I think Dick's okay. He's been sending in some VTRs. He's been showing up on some of the TV, as we'll see. He wasn't on this past episode, but he's going to be on a future episode here. So Dick Slater going to hang around for at least a little while longer here in Georgia while he's booking down there in Southwest. And I'm sure he's getting over down there too. But another big show at the Omni as we roll on to April 5th, Augusta, Georgia. It just keeps continuing on to Bell Auditorium. Ricky Harris battling Tom Pritchard to a draw. Bob Armstrong over Chick Donovan. Leroy Brown teaming with Brad Armstrong over The Assassin and Super D by DQ. Kevin Sullivan taking Buzz Sawyer to a no contest. And Tommy Rich scoring a win over Ron Bass.
That Sullivan Sawyer feud is starting to heat up now. That actually ends up being pretty good. Spoiler alert. They're going to have quite a few TV run-ins, I believe.
Very good. Looking forward to that then. Jammie Ward going to spoil it for us, but give us something to look forward to in the process. We continue on April 7th, Columbus, Georgia, Municipal Auditorium. Jerry Oates over Ricky Harris. It's Tom Pritchard defeating Ken Timms. The Armstrongs finally going to team up father and son. Bob and Brad over Super Destroyer and The Assassin by DQ. Kevin Sullivan taking Buzz Sawyer to a no contest. And Tommy Rich also a no contest with Ron Bass. Lots of unsettled matches here in Columbus, Georgia. I'm imagining they're going to be bringing a lot of these back.
Well, they're a weekly town, so yeah, I would totally agree with that. And just looking at these results, there's no John Studd from,
he's been missing
the 7th. Yeah. So maybe he tweaked the groin or something.
Yeah, those big guy groins, man. You know what they say, the bigger they are, the more painful the groin. I don't know, something like that. And we continue.
Yeah, so maybe, just a slight injury that just kept him out for a week or so.
No, yeah. Absolutely. That could always be the case. Or maybe he took another little job somewhere. I don't know, but I'm sure he'll be back before too long and we'll find out. We continue on April the 9th, Carrollton, Georgia at the Fairgrounds. Tom Pritchard over Ricky Harris. Kevin Sullivan defeating Chick Donovan. Brad Armstrong scoring a victory over Buzz Sawyer. Main event tag team action, Tommy Rich and Leroy Brown over Ron Bass and Super Destroyer there in Carrollton as we roll on to April the 10th. And we're back in TBS studios and we do have footage this week. It exists, guys, at least some of it. You can go over right now to youtube.com/Rasslin Grenade. Check out what I know of to exist of this show, mostly angles and promos. Really good stuff. Actually, it fills the gaps in between all of the matches, which we don't have very much of. But I do have results, so we'll look at the results and then we'll go into some of the storylines, Jamie.
Sounds good.
All right, in the hour number 1 matches, we're going to see Wildfire Tommy Rich over Big Steve Seibert. I don't know if you're familiar or remember Steve Seibert. I know he worked some in Joe Blanchard down there in San Antonio. He's a big boy, but a preliminary guy. He's another one of those guys that are believable enough that maybe they could have been something in one of the smaller territories. Kabuki over Bob McKenzie. Tom Pritchard scoring a TV victory over Rusty Roberts. Buzz Sawyer over Mike Jackson, and Kevin Sullivan defeating Tony Russo in hour number 1. As we get going into the storylines for hour 1, you got anything you want to touch on? Any matches there that stick out to you?
No, just nice to see Tony Russo and Mike Jackson back for TV again.
Yes, absolutely. And I can never get enough of the Buzz Sawyer Mike Jackson matches, though I have to imagine Mike had plenty of it. As we continue on, we got some storylines of brewing here in hour number 1. And it looks like we are back to the infamous lifelong blood feud that never seems to end. I'm talking about Ole Anderson versus the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. Is Ole going to join the announce team in his street clothes early on in the program, showing off a large black hood that covers the entire head, a blindfold, if you will. Anderson announcing the match has been signed. All Dusty has to do is show up, because for the first time, the stipulations, the gimmick matches, are no longer in Dusty's favor. It's in Ole's favor. Apparently, we're setting up a singles match between the American Dream and Ole Anderson in a Minnesota Loggers blindfold match. I don't know the backstory as to why Minnesota Loggers would ever wear a blindfold, but here we are.
That sounds pretty dangerous to me.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very safe. Anything with logging isn't safe to begin with, but doing it with a blindfold, I don't know. But we get some fun stuff here because Roddy Piper obviously out there with Gordon, and he's in the background as Ole's explaining this match and cutting a promo on Dusty. Piper pretending to put the blindfold on and playing with it and having this is classic hot rod shit right here. And that's why I love Roddy Piper.
Back then, I had no idea, but looking back at that today, Piper must have had some fun stuff of his own before he went out there for that segment.
Well,
he was having a good time.
I thought that went without saying. Roddy Piper just enjoying himself out here, though. Is Ole cutting the promo, not really showing Anderson up, so Ole probably let it slide. I mean, when you got a guy like Roddy Piper, the talent of Roddy Piper, it's going to take a lot to get him fired. We'll have to at least a few more months anyway. We then hear from the other side, Dusty Rhodes, and presumably Bloody Dusty again, because this VTR, much like several we've seen in recent weeks, in a silhouette form, in a towel over the head of the American Dream, but he is hot and angry. And a shouting Big Dust essentially sounds like he's coming to end the life of Ole Anderson here. So we come out of that bunkhouse match, couple of tag matches with Ole and Stan versus Terry and Dusty, but now it whittles down to where it all began, which is the lifelong feud between the Andersons and Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, and you know what? We all laugh at some of Dusty's interviews, and he could do really funny stuff, kind of like what Piper was doing in the background there.
Right.
But when Dusty got serious, there wasn't many that were better than Dusty when it came down to a real serious interview. And this is Dusty at his best, wanting to get his hands on Ole Anderson.
I think we've seen a different Dusty in recent weeks and months here. He's really turned it on. He's cut some really great promos on TV. I wouldn't classify this as one of the very best because we saw some really good ones there a few weeks back. But this was still good. It was very serious. You know what I mean? So Dusty was able to have a little fun sometimes, but get his point across. And he was very angry and really coming at you, baby, if you will, here in this promo. And that's when we cut back to the studio and Ray the Crippler Stevens shows up to confront Ole Anderson and I guess Roddy Piper. He essentially puts over Dusty Rhodes, says that Dusty's coming for both of them and both men will be sorry. So it's one of those promos where a guy's, I don't know necessarily saying passing through the territory, but Stevens is here. He has credibility. His name goes a long way back, and he's out here to put over the current storylines in the company while, just making note that, hey, I'm here too.
Yeah, maybe he had just wrapped up his Mid-Atlantic run because him and Ole had to fallen out in Mid-Atlantic. He had turned face there. So maybe this is just like a little stopgap for him before he goes on to wherever he goes after this. But what's interesting, Vince McMahon must have been watching Georgia Championship Wrestling because when he takes over the company from Daddy, Ray Stevens is one of the first guys he brings in.
Well, they do bring Ray in, yeah, and I was a little surprised by that, but Stevens and Snuka and et cetera, they're up in New York. Yeah, good stuff there for the time to bring Ray. Good call, because I'd forgotten all about that being this time frame. I put in my notes here because I was a little confused. I mean, I know they're just selling the angle and the story and the gimmick match, but I'm not 100% sure how a blindfold favors Ole, because he said the stipulations have always been in your favor, Dusty Rhodes, but this time they're in my favor. It's a blindfold match. Now, I don't know what kind of kink Ole is into, but it just seems odd that blindfold matches are somehow in Ole's favor.
That's because Ole knew the blindfold he would have on would be extra thin and he could see through it. Okay. And Dusty's would be extra thick and there'd be no way Dusty could see. Ole would just get on top of him from the beginning and never give Dusty a chance.
Very interesting. That's an interesting take on that. I like that. The fans used to always be able to make up their own reasoning for how things play out. And we're going to see how that match plays out when we get there. The Minnesota Loggers blindfold match. I've never heard a blindfold match being referenced to loggers in the past, but here we are. And Tommy Rich and Bob Armstrong out next to cut a promo talking the next Omni card because it just keeps going, guys. April the 18th, we're coming back to the Omni in Atlanta. And one of the big matches on the card, a Canadian Lumberjack strap match, 6-man Canadian Lumberjack strap match. Going to see Dick Slater, Tommy Rich, and Bob Armstrong, listen to this, guys, take on the trio of the Great Kabuki, Roddy Piper, and Gary Hart. The manager, Gary Hart, going to be placed in the ring. You can't trust him handcuffed to the top rope. You can't trust that he'll be barred from ringside, barred from the building. So what better way than to get Gary in the ring where you know where he's at all times?
Exactly. And I was very surprised at the time that they said Gary Hart was going to wrestle. And now looking back, 40 years later and seeing how Gary Hart, as time went on, did less bump taking. Right. It's interesting to see Gary still climbing in a ring here.
Yeah, Gary, I don't know what kind of action Gary gave us there in that match. Now, the babyfaces, Tommy and Bob Armstrong, come out here with leather straps. They're whipping poor Gordon's podium into oblivion here. They're going to show you how dangerous these leather straps can be. So the next Omni card, obviously built on some stipulations. We got Minnesota Loggers. We've got Canadian Lumberjacks. So I'm sensing a theme here. Ole must be making a good ton of money at this point there in his industry, if you will, his side job.
Oh, that's right. He was ran a wood mill, correct?
Yes. He had a wood mill. He was Georgia? Making millions. Yeah. He owned a lot of property. I'm not sure where it was located. I want to say it was up in Minnesota or somewhere closer to home. But yeah, he had a large farm of trees. My understanding, a big, gigantic. Let's put it this way. I think he made more money, on the logging side of things versus even pro wrestling. But Ole loved, I guess if Ole could love something, apparently he loved working in the wrestling business, or at least stretching people or telling people what to do or cursing people out or something of that nature. But we've got two big gimmick matches coming up in the next Omni show. So very interesting as Ray Stevens returns in that brown suit that only he can do. Stevens admitting to his past in the business. He's not going to ignore things. He's done a lot of things that he's not proud of, but he says that's the name of the game. If he hurts someone, so be it. And if someone hurts him, so be that too. But never in the Crippler's career did he ever use a group of men to attack someone, maim them. He always did it by himself. It was always one-on-one, says Ray Stevens. And these recent actions we've been seeing out here with a pack of men, he's talking about the heels, 4 or 5 guys ganging up with an unfair advantage, it isn't something Stevens condones. So basically acknowledging his past, but cutting kind of a babyface promo here for Ray Stevens.
Yeah, like I said earlier on, he was a heel when he left, so it's surprising just to see him pop back up as a babyface, and obviously he must be getting some early stages of Alzheimer's because he forgets about Pat Patterson, Nick Bockwinkel, and Bobby Heenan. Not like those guys ever jumped anybody.
Well, no, of course not. It's not like he wasn't out there with Torquemada and the Great Mephisto attacking people either.
That's right, just months ago, exactly.
Well, we tell the story we're in right now, and that is Ray Stevens has always done it by himself. If he was going to maim someone, that's why they call him the Crippler, damn it. But up next American Dream Dusty Rhodes has arrived in studio this week, talking that upcoming blindfold match with Ole Anderson, and being in the dark, if you will, in the dark. He says Ole's been in the dark since the day his mama made him, or had him. Sorry, guys. Dusty was raised in darkness, though. He knows what dark is. You can put Dusty in a hood. You can blind him. You can have 5,000 million people to walk through it. He may not be able to see Ole, but he sure as hell can smell him, Jack. And as long as he can smell you, Ole, he's going to kick your boot ass. So we talk about that serious promo we heard from Dusty last time around. This time having a little more fun with Ole Anderson.
Yes, this was a fun Dusty Rhodes interview.
So 5,000 million people, says Big Dusty. Gonna walk right through them and get to Ole Anderson. It's coming up, baby. It's the blindfold match. We'll have more on that as we go along in this program. We also hear, oh, this is good. This is good. Brad Armstrong going to come out here by himself. Very interesting for a promo. We don't see that often. We'll find out why here. So Bradley dressed also in street clothes, much like Dusty, much like Ole. I wrote in my notes, it's nobody wrestling here this week. But Brad talks about being one of the mini lumberjacks in that upcoming 6-man tag at the Omni. And he's looking forward to strapping people like Roddy Piper. Well, that doesn't sound very unbiased, Brad. Then, for no reason, Brad decides that he wants to demonstrate the Minnesota Loggers blindfold. And so what Brad does next, guys, unbelievably, is he basically puts on the blindfold, which is really a sleeveless shirt with a hood sewn on it. So it's like a full body, almost like a full body blindfold. I guess that's a good way to keep it on. But Brad puts on this blindfold, if you will, puts his arms through the holes of the shirt, the hood on his head, and he begins to marvel at the darkness and the inability to see. Got to put it over with fun. And hopefully you guys can see where this is going at this point because, yep, as Brad Armstrong stands out there demonstrating blindly and discussing the blindness, Ole Anderson is out to take advantage, attacking Brad Armstrong. And now Dusty Rhodes, quick to make the save, run Ole off as Papa Bullet Bob and Tommy Rich check on the downed Brad Armstrong. Dusty going to run Ole off and put on the hood himself, shouting, you pig, I can smell you anywhere. So Dusty looking forward to his showdown with Ole Anderson, but I got to go back. Let's go back and talk about Brad Armstrong in that hood. We'd see the Fantastics do this with the straitjacket. And we would see this done a couple more times in the later 80s. But was this the inception of this story where the guy would basically enable himself and the heel would see the advantage and make the jump?
Oh, I'm sure it had to happen years before. It's the first time I had ever seen it. But then again, 15-year-old Jammie Ward had the vision of Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles and knew what was going to happen.
Well, I'll say this much, off the top of my head, I can't recall an earlier instance of this. It's very clever, even for the time, I think it's clever. So if this, and it's wrestling, so everything's recycled. So if this was done in any way, shape, or form in the past, maybe I'm not thinking of it. If anybody out there listening can recall an earlier inception of this type of story where the babyface comes out to demonstrate the upcoming gimmick match, finds himself blinded, finds himself tied up, and then the heel comes out and attacks, please let us know. I want to mention it here on the program because I'm curious how far back that specific angle goes, but I loved it here.
I agree with you, Ray, that it had to be used in the past somewhere, but I'm with you. I've never had seen it up to that point. Just that I just felt like this had to be, recycled and you knew that poor Brad was going to be the sacrificial lamb, as to say. But something else that comes out of this.
Yeah.
As a first-timer. Now, I had not seen the entire Dusty Rhodes, Ole Anderson wars going way back. Yeah. But this was the first time I ever remember this is the next step of the evolution of Ole Anderson becoming Pigface Ole Anderson.
Oh, yeah.
Which they wind up using all the way up into the 90s, that nickname with Ole.
Which is, really interesting because it hadn't even been mentioned. It's like Dusty walked. I'm going to start calling you about a pig, baby. I'm going to give you a pig name. And we're going to talk about that pig name here in just a moment as well. But, as we close out that segment with Brad Armstrong getting the beatdown, luckily for Brad, it wasn't long. So it was more of an insult than injury angle. We've seen guys get the crap beat out of them while in straitjackets and things in the past. But since Brad wasn't really part of the actual story here, he just gets beat down for briefly. Dusty's out, then Bob Armstrong, Tommy Rich are out to save the day. But you get a little taste of how dastardly Ole Anderson can be. Cerebral assassin number one, Ole Anderson. What he's capable of, not just here on TV, but what he's capable of come April 18th in the Omni.
Yeah, I like that analogy. The original cerebral assassin. Triple H stole Anderson's gimmick. You're absolutely right.
He stole his beard too. Remember when Triple H had the sideburns that went into the mustache gimmick? Yeah. So, and some of his matches were about as boring as Ole's as well. But that's another story for another day. We're going to continue on. Dusty Rhodes back later in the program. He has a new name for Ole. You referenced this. He's already mentioned him being a pig and smelling him from a mile away. Dusty saying since Ole smells so bad, his new name is Miss Piggy, baby. Dusty then putting on the blindfold and then his cowboy hat back on top of the blindfold. So great visual there. I think I used it for my thumbnail on YouTube. Dusty Rhodes, though, comically talking to the wall behind him because he can't see, Jamie, before knocking over the podium, stumbling forward, and the crowd eating it up. The charisma of the American Dream, having some fun out here this week. It's amazing that you're in the middle of a blood feud. You're promoting a gimmick match, and Dusty's still somehow managing to sell it while being a comedy man out here.
And poor Gordon's caught in the middle. He doesn't know whether to laugh.
Yes.
Or give the serious face on this. He's the one time Gordon saw he didn't know how to sell something.
Yeah, you could see the smirk on Gordon, though. Dusty talking to the back. Well, even the podium, normally Gordon would be pissed off somebody does that, but he seemed to get a little chuckle out of that as well. So Gordon having a good day. As we close out hour number 1, we see Roddy Piper and Gary Hart, the best buds out here, running down all of the baby faces. You guys want us gone, but we're here to say, so says the Hot Rod and Gary Hart. As we move into hour number 2, more results here for you guys. John Studd is back, so we're happy to report that. Studd out here teaming with his tag team champion partner, Super Destroyer, over Alan Tupperella and Wayne Burnett. Also, Leroy Brown. We don't see him a lot on TV in action. We don't get to see him here because I'm missing the footage. But it is bad Leroy Brown over Steve Seibert. Eddie Mansfield is back for TV this week, another one match on the card. So it's kind of interesting. A lot of these guys work double duty, hour 1, hour 2. Mansfield being given one match per week. He's scoring a win over Rick Thor here. Buzz Sawyer over Rusty Roberts, and Tom Pritchard closing the show. Final match on the TV program over Tony Russo.
Yeah, ever since Ron Fuller left, we haven't seen much of Leroy Brown.
No, definitely not in the ring. When he does come out, there are those quick promos that we used to get from wrestling too, where it's just kind of a generic promo. But Leroy out here wrestling this week, which would explain why so many guys were in street clothes. They had to put Leroy in the ring because I feel like Leroy just wore overalls to the arena or something. So it worked out that way.
Well, he wasn't breaking a sweat, so he didn't need to change.
Well, we get another promo here from the heels talking about Roddy Piper, Gary Hart. Ole Anderson going to join him this time, and they talk about the black veil over the American Dream. Of course, the hood, the black hood, the blindfold, if you will, the black veil over the American Dream. Dusty Rhodes, Roddy Piper talking the strap match as well, the big 6-man strap match. He says, I like getting hit. He likes getting beat up a little bit. He welcomes the straps. Somehow, I don't doubt that.
Especially if he was indulging in something.
Sure. Well, that goes without saying, Jamie. We don't have to push that hard. I mean, we know Roddy Piper's on something that we thought Michael Hayes was. We know the Hot Rod is. As we get, it's a lot of back and forth this week on TV. We get it all here. Thank you, Harold. Another Dusty Rhodes promo. He says, come on in, get your money's worth, son. He says something very special he has planned. He's got a live smelling pig being shipped to TBS Studios. So Miss Piggy Ole Anderson can smell what he smells like, if you will. Dusty Rhodes, he says he's the master of confusion. Another fun promo from Big Dust.
And this is why they needed more Dusty on Georgia Championship Wrestling at the time. I mean, at least the show's getting ready to go off and you have a smile on your face just watching Dusty Rhodes at this time. Unlike a few years later, where you just wish Dusty disappeared from the television.
That's correct. Yeah. But here we couldn't get enough of Big Dust. But isn't it funny? We're out here just a few weeks ago and we're playing the audio of that promo with Terry Funk, and his father passed away and gave him the watch and how much it means to him. And Dusty's going to hold it. And we get this like serious, dramatic storyline. And here we are, fast forward just a few weeks later, and Dusty could just flip it on a dime. Like, it just changed the gimmick, whatever the story may be, whatever the case may be. Dusty could be serious. He could be intense. We heard that promo last week or whatever it was in that VTR. But now he's out here doing comedy this week. So Dusty's all over the place. It's a different American Dream every week, but yet you don't really question it like you would some of these other guys.
Yeah, it's because he can go both ways, and he's good at both ways of whatever way he wants to conduct himself. The public buys it.
Well, we close out the program. The last bit of footage we have from the April show here is Wildfire Tommy Rich, a VTR of the wildfire visiting yet another sick kid in the hospital. We haven't seen one of these VTRs in quite a while, but it seems like they do it right around this time every year. It feels like to me anyway. The wildfire out here talking with another young lad, if you will, and asking him the ever important question that we always hear: how many girlfriends you got? Was that not like the old timers thing to ask though back in the, like, I don't know about you, Jamie, but when I was a kid, whenever the elderly, I don't mean old people, but just older than me, would come around, that was the big thing to ask the little kids, like, how many girlfriends you got? I used to hear that a lot as a kid. I don't know if that was just me or what the deal was, but whenever I hear it here, it just brings back those memories to me. Like, was that just like a thing people did back in the day, or did you not encounter that?
No, that's exactly like one of the first things, whether it be a grandmother, grandfather, just a friend or whatever. One of the first questions they came up with was, how many girlfriends you got?
It's so weird that was lost in time. I feel like maybe the 80s was the last generation to hear that, but we hear it here on Georgia every time they do these hospital visits. And it brings me back to my youth in the 80s, my grandfather's brothers. Whenever we would visit or they would visit, one of the first things they'd ask me every time, how many girlfriends you got? Or smile if you got a girlfriend. Of course, you have to smile, so just they have a little fun with that. That's a lost art. We got to bring that back. I got to start asking kids. I don't know. That's kind of creepy, though, maybe. And you don't know what kind of answer you're going to get nowadays either. So,
yeah, you're better off just leave that one alone, right? Some things don't age well. I just did a podcast with the other ship, and we were talking about 80s movies. And one of the movies we were talking about was Revenge of the Nerds, that just has, if you look back, so many cringeworthy things that occurred in that movie. But yet, I was of college age at the time, and I was laughing my ass off. But looking back now, like, I wouldn't want my kids to see this movie or behave like these guys did in that movie. Society changes. So that's kind of along the same lines. You don't want to just ask somebody, man or woman, how many boyfriends, how many girlfriends you got.
Yeah. We'll leave it with the past, but I'll just leave it there for now. But no, you talked about that movie, and I haven't listened to that episode yet, but I was looking forward to it because I'm curious to see what movies you guys hit on. But in reference to that movie, the last time I watched it, I know I happened to have them on VHS, so that's the last time I saw the movie. But now that you mention it, I got to go back and check that out after the holiday season. Though I got to catch up on my holiday movies first.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
Hey guys, Ray Russell back to talk to you about all the new and exciting audio and video podcasts we've been putting together over at patreon.com/WrestleCopia. As a self-funded brand, this entire ship is powered by our patrons. It's your support that keeps all of these wonderful shows going here at WrestleCopia. And with that said, I wanted to mention that we now have 3 major tiers with tons of Patreon-exclusive next-level content for our Patreon supporters. And it all starts with the $5 all-access tier, which gets you early access to many of the weekly podcasts, at least a dozen monthly digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure, the insanely detailed show notes for the Wrestling Memory Grenade Regional Rasslin, and the OG Monday Warfare podcast, plus random bonus video drops, archived old-school audio watch-alongs from the early years of the brand. And if that's not all, the brand new Patreon-exclusive podcast, Ranting Raw, featuring yours truly, Ray Russell, completely uncensored, unfiltered, with honest takes, taking patron questions and addressing various topics from throughout wrestling history. It is a whole lot of fun wrapped under the all-access tier for only $5, but things get even hotter with the VIP Superfan tier. For just a few dollars more, you get everything already mentioned in the all-access tier, plus as part of the VIP tier, a whole new slew of videocast series where it's not just your typical watch-alongs. Sure, we laugh, we have fun, but we're also breaking down the history, the context, and the why behind what you're seeing. And as part of the VIP tier, you have access to Dan Ginnity's Puro Resu Academy videocast, the Coliseum videocast with co-host Gene Jackson, and the Monday Warfare videocast, Raw vs. Nitro, breaking down the history of the Monday Night War. Plus, you also get the Memphis 1985 folder of goodies, and all show notes for the Puro Academy podcast and Gene's retro review show. Lots to be had there at the VIP tier. But wait, there's more. For those WrestleCopia backers who crave even more from the brand, we bring you yet another level of content fit for a warrior, because it is indeed the ultimate tier, which gives you everything from the All Access Pass, everything from the VIP tier, plus you will receive access to the big ones, video series featuring a lengthy look and discussion into some of the biggest pay-per-views, super shows, and other events from throughout wrestling history. It's also a great place to keep up with the big events that coincide with the Monday Warfare video cast and so many other big events from years gone by. You'll also have access to the newest big hit to the Copia brand. I'm talking about Regional Rasslin Unreal, the video series. Get ready for the next level in Regional Rasslin as we dissect territory history in video form. Watch along with us. But still, even more for your money, guys. You'll also receive access to the Treasure Chest, which offers patrons the unique opportunity to download and watch select rarities from wrestling history. And for those of you who are wondering what we offer, are contemplating joining a paid Patreon membership, or simply a curious lurker, a reminder there's a free tier at our Patreon that you can join as well. Remember, guys, no subscription, cancel any time, but I think you'll like the content that we're offering there for any budget you may have. And you can sign up right now, patreon.com/WrestleCopia, or look for the QR code where available. We appreciate your support in helping us pay the bills to keep the WrestleCopia podcast network running and enabling us to continue to bring you all the quality programming that we offer.
Relive the glory days of Memphis wrestling with the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. Each week, we go back in time to review USWA Championship Wrestling from the 1990s, episode by episode. Join us for watch-alongs, behind-the-scenes stories, and exclusive interviews with people who were there and lived it. Whether you grew up watching it or you're discovering it for the first time, this podcast is your ringside seat to Memphis wrestling history. It's all a part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Listen now at USWApodcast.com.
As we continue on, guys, April the 10th, Chattanooga, Tennessee, McClellan Gym. Tom Pritchard battling Eddie Mansfield to a draw. Mansfield listed as a sub for the Invader, which is really odd. We don't have an Invader here, but Eddie Mansfield does make a trip to Chattanooga here, battling Tom Pritchard to a draw in the opener. Brad Armstrong over Chick Donovan, John Studd, and Super D over the Oates brothers. A little quality challenger there for the tag team champions. Kevin Sullivan taking Buzz Sawyer around the horn again to a no contest and taking advantage of their surroundings. Look at the main event here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Wildfire Tommy Rich going to go after a local legend of sorts, bringing in old Roughhouse Fargo coming to the Georgia territory. Tommy Rich and Roughhouse Fargo over Ron Bass and the Great Kabuki. That came out of nowhere.
And that had to be a ton of fun for the fans in Chattanooga that night.
Fans in Chattanooga, I'm sure Tommy Rich was having a great time out there. So it's Ron Bass was even around for some Roughhouse Fargo in Memphis, I think. So I think Kabuki was the odd man out here. Like, what the hell is going on here with isn't that the referee in Mid-Atlantic? But well, it's good times, man. I love seeing that. You never know what's going to happen here when you go around the towns in these random cities outside of Georgia. And so we continue on. I don't have results. I do know April 11th, Georgia Championship Wrestling in Charleston, West Virginia at the Civic Center. So we move on to the 13th, Canton, Ohio at the Civic Center. April 13th, Kevin Sullivan battling Brad Armstrong to a draw. Buzz Sawyer over Tom Pritchard. Tag team champions Super D and John Studd over Bob Armstrong and Leroy Brown. Dusty Rhodes defeating the Great Kabuki by DQ. And Tommy Rich over the champ. National champion, Ron Bass by DQ. And I'll get it right before we're done here.
Well, obviously, it wasn't his last title match there in the Omni.
No, clearly not. It might be his last match in the Omni for the title. I don't know that either. But I can see they're making the trip up here, up north. Tommy Rich still getting title shots against Ron Bass. And we're going to see it again here in just a moment as we continue on. April 14th, Lansing, Michigan. Already back in Lansing against Civic Center. Super D over Tom Pritchard. Kevin Sullivan taking Brad Armstrong to a draw. Leroy Brown over Big John Studd. Ooh, that couldn't have been pretty, but talk about a battle of the big boys. Bob Armstrong teaming with Dusty Rhodes. What a team. Over Kabuki and Buzz Sawyer. And Tommy Rich again scoring a win over Ron Bass on a DQ.
Yeah, Dusty likes doing these Michigan tours.
Yeah, he's been in Columbus since the beginning, and now he's kind of branching out here. I wonder if Dusty gets a little more off the top or something here in these northern tours, because he's all about it. He doesn't really do the Georgia tours very often, but he doesn't seem to have a problem out there. I wonder if he's guaranteed X amount of dollars to help pop these new towns. As we continue on, April 15th, Grand Rapids, Michigan, Sullivan over Tom Pritchard, Ron Bass defeating Brad Armstrong. It's John Studd and Super D over Bob Armstrong and Leroy Brown once again. Tommy Rich scoring a win over Buzz Sawyer. And Dusty Rhodes over Kabuki by DQ in Grand Rapids.
The Boogeyman.
The Boogeyman can't seem to get any wins, but he doesn't get pinned very often either. DQ victory from Big Dust, who's had his issues with Kabuki in the past, not just here in Georgia, but all around the U.S., it would appear. As we go on, April 16th, Saginaw, Michigan, Civic Center. Sullivan battling Pritchard again to a draw. Leroy Brown double count out with Super Destroyer this time. Buzz Sawyer over Brad Armstrong. Bob Armstrong defeating Ron Bass by DQ. And Dusty Rhodes teaming with Tommy Rich over John Studd and Kabuki. Ugh, I'm not a big fan of that team. That couldn't have been pretty.
Do you think Gary Hart's on these tours? Or was he booking Fritz at the time?
Well, I mean, Gary was definitely down there with Fritz in 82. The question is, was he working these tours? I don't know. I mean, either he was on the entire tour or he wasn't. I can't see Gary I got to get up there and work Saginaw or something like that. So, but we do have, we're back to TV again, Jamie, as we get down to the nitty gritty. We've got this TV and we've got one more Omni card to discuss as well. April 17th, back in TBS Studios, going to open the program this week with Somebody Say Something About Wildfire Tommy Rich talking the Northern Tour. They were just on, talks never having a fair shake against the great Kabuki or Roddy Piper. He says if you fight one of them, you got them all. Piper, Kabuki, Gary Hart. But at the Omni, they're going to all be in the ring at the same time. And there ain't going to be nowhere to run. Nobody can hide. Nobody can leave because they're going to be men with leather straps surrounding the ring. So there it is. Kind of wondered how that strap match was going to work. Was it going to be where the guy's going to be tied together? Was everybody Mid-South style where they can all have a strap tied around their wrist they can use as a whipping tool? But instead, it sounds like it's going to be lumberjack with straps type rules.
Yes, and that's exactly what the match was when we get to the Omni.
And so the issues have been, Roddy Piper running in on Kabuki matches, Kabuki running in on Roddy Piper matches, Gary Hart getting involved. This time, they're all going to be in the ring at the same time. No run-ins because there's going to be guys around the ring with straps. And nobody can escape because there's going to be guys around the ring with straps. And that brings out Sir Hot Rod himself, Roddy Piper, out here to confront Tommy Rich, tossing his jacket down in a rage. Roddy Piper taking exception to the comments made by Tommy Rich, running and hiding. Tommy also going to remove his jacket. He's ready to go here, Jamie. But Bob Armstrong joining the argument and Roddy wisely storming off. And at that point, we go back to a VTR of a recent matchup between Piper and Bob Armstrong. Might have been the Columbus, Ohio show. We see a ref bump take place. Is Piper going to remove the referee's belt from his pants, his trousers, and begin whipping Bob Armstrong? Well, Bob says here in an interview that don't nobody do that to me but my mama. Bob mentioning he didn't have no strap to fight back then with that match in Roddy Piper, but payback is a coming now. So we've got a fun little story here. It starts with Tommy Rich. Piper confronts in classic Roddy Piper fashion, but Bob Armstrong also part of that match. Let's Piper feel what does it feel like to be outnumbered out here, 2-on-1. Piper wisely leaving, but we hear from Bullet as well. We even get a little highlight there of Roddy Piper. So some backstory.
Yes, and something you've been clamoring for months. We get a little of arena action.
Yes.
That we barely ever get. While it's not the Omni, like you said, it's most likely Columbus. And it's just good to see them put something like that on TV for a change instead of nothing. And you're just believing the stories that they have to tell you. But yeah, boy, Piper didn't hold back either. He whipped the hell out of Armstrong.
No, yeah. I mean, get it in, son. Get it over. I mean, make it good, if you will. And that's what Roddy Piper did there. I'm glad that they were able to use I think it helps build towards your story, your big match, your angle, your gimmick match. Well, incorporating the strap into the storyline to build to the match where there are straps surrounding the ring. So it only makes sense. And so we continue on. We've got some matches in between some of these angles, which are part of the video. The matches are not. The angles are definitely there. Some interviews are there. Go check it out again. YouTube.com/WrestlingGrenade. The last couple of weeks of TV here we're discussing. But also on the show, there are several matches, obviously. And one of them involves yet another newcomer stopping through. Indianapolis' own Spike Huber scoring a win over Chick Donovan. So we saw Eddie Mansfield here for the last couple of weeks on TV. And now Spike Huber comes through town. Do you remember Spike Huber coming to Georgia?
Yes, I remember seeing the show and having him come through. I don't remember him really staying around at all, but Spike did do a lot of hit and miss. I mean, in '84, he shows up in the WWF.
Yeah.
He was, of course, Dick the Bruiser's son-in-law.
Right.
So he was shipping him out. He did some Mid-South, and I believe he'll even come through when we get to it sometime in '83 on Regional Wrestling Unreal, the Southwest edition. I believe he comes through Southwest at some point. So being Dick the Bruiser's son-in-law didn't hurt Spike Huber's career at that point.
No, obviously he gets some work, like you said, in random territory. Doesn't stay too long anywhere outside of the WWA area, but Spike Huber is here on national television. You can't ask for anything more than national exposure here on cable TV, Channel 17, the Superstation, baby. Spike Huber over Chick Donovan, which is a hell of an opponent to draw here, right here on TV to get things going. After the break, after that matchup, we get another Bob Armstrong interview. And this time, Roddy Piper and Gary Hart. Aha, Piper's back with Gary Hart. They're outnumbering the Bullet. But doesn't take long for Tommy Rich to quickly prove it's going to be even odds here this week. And the heels, once again, take off because they're not outnumbering the baby faces. As the good guys here reiterating, it'll be even sides at the Omni. No ganging up anymore this time, fellas. It's going to be a 6-man tag, 3-on-3. And we talked about it. We're going to see more about it here in this episode. As Piper and Hart, though, they're going to come back. They're not going to be outdone. This time they return. So we have Tommy Rich and Bob Armstrong out here, 2 men. And Hart and Piper return with Kabuki this time. Now again, the heels outnumbering the baby faces. But wait a minute, there's more. Holy shit. Nobody knew it, but apparently Dick Slater is also in the studio this week. So Dickie rushing out, swinging a strap wildly. I wouldn't want to be around that. Dick Slater with a strap. And the heels running off again because the baby faces have proven, they're telling the story right here on TV, they have evened the odds.
Yes, I mean, Dick Slater, the great even upper.
Yeah, I mean, he's more than one person on his own. Great intensity here by Slater, though. Like I said, Slater, he doesn't need a strap, but Slater with a strap, even more scary. And he comes out here to even the odds. I love that. I love the fun little, you can kind of laugh. You can laugh with it, but the heat is there as well. Because here's the heels. There's 2 of them. They're out, we even the odds did the baby faces. So the heels leave and they come back. Aha, we outsmarted you. Here's Kabuki. Now it's 3-on-2. What do you say about that, motherfucker? And Dick Slater was in the studio all along, and they finally show their hand. Slater running Rodney, Piper, and company off. I loved it. Fun little segment there.
Especially with this segment, you understand why in Georgia he was called Mr. Unpredictable Dick Slater, because you never knew what was going to happen when Slater was in town. And going against Piper, what a great opponent. What 2 great nut jobs to go against each other.
That's a good thing those guys got along. You talk about unpredictable. There is no better adjective to describe Dick Slater than unpredictable. I'm sure even Dickie had no idea what he was doing most of the time. Program goes on, though. National champion Ron Bass over Ken Timms in the ring. Tom Pritchard picking up another victory over Tony Russo this week. And then we hear what may be, off the top of my head, the first interview conducted with Tom Pritchard. Pritchard out here putting his attention to Roddy Piper, or Rodney Piper, as Pritchard calls him here. He says Roddy's going to get strapped and get what's coming to him in that 6-man tag. Sounds like Tom Pritchard going to be another one of those lumberjack with straps, and he seems to be focused on Roddy Piper specifically, and that would make sense considering his infatuation with trying to do imitations of Roddy in years to come.
Well, within 6 months, he's going to be doing a Piper imitation. The moment Piper starts, doing most of his time in Mid-Atlantic again,
right,
he slowly transforms into Roddy Piper light.
That he does, and I'm looking forward to that. But it was cool to see Tom Pritchard getting a little mic time. It tells you that they're planning on doing a little more. Ole likes what he sees with this young guy. We go on. You want to talk about newcomers here to the territory. We saw Spike Huber, but now get a load of this. He is the one and only Paul Orndorff has arrived here in Georgia, taking on Jim Dalton, the Brandon Bull from Brandon, Florida, making his, what Gordon calls here, a Georgia debut. Now, in reality, I had to do a little digging. That seemed unrealistic. Paul had a very brief cup of coffee here very early in his career in 1976. And he had one showcase match on TV here with his partner at the time, Jimmy Snuka, in 1979. Outside of that, this, for all intents and purposes, is the veteran Paul Orndorff's debut, if you will, here in Georgia TV. So things are about to get good.
Yes, this is the beginning of the Paul Orndorff era on TBS. And he was impressive, like you just said, impressive as hell in this match. I'd already seen him in Mid-South, both as a heel and a face.
Right.
And I was confused like you were a little bit. He wrestled like a heel, but Gordon was putting him over like a face. So I was confused exactly what they were going to do with him at this point.
Yeah, and straight off his run, good point, straight off his run there with the Mid-South at this point, if I'm doing my math correctly. Having that run on top with Ted DiBiase and, of course, Bob Roop and that little triangle storyline they were telling there with the North American title. But now Paul Orndorff has arrived here in Georgia Championship Wrestling, and he is aggressive as all hell in this matchup, clearly playing a heel while Gordon putting him over like $1 million on commentary, as you said, Jamie. And his background, his pro wrestling accolades, Gordon leaving nothing out here to put over the history, to build up Paul Orndorff here, who does a nice drop kick. I always forget Paul had a nice drop kick. He didn't throw it very often, but it looked good here. Also leveling his opponent with a hangman-style clothesline, which sets him up for the perfect plex, or would it be the wonderful plex? It is indeed the fisherman suplex, though, with a beautiful bridge. Got to give Paul Orndorff the win, 2 minutes and 47 seconds. Wow, I had not seen that before out of Orndorff's repertoire. A very well-landed perfect plex.
Orndorff was the original total package. Forget Lex Luger. Paul Orndorff was like a wrestling god. Not to the level of Ric Flair. He didn't have all the technical stuff down and flashy in the matches, but the guy was just flawless in the ring.
I feel like if you could have taken early to mid-'80s Paul Orndorff and just pushed it ahead a little, to the late 80s into the early 90s. We'd be talking a lot there. Even though he was huge for his era and he was part of WrestleMania and he was a headliner heel and face there underneath Hulk Hogan in the WWF, I felt like we would be talking even more about Orndorff and what he accomplished if all of his peak years had just happened a few years later. Because, when it was super national expansion era, when everything was Crockett and Vince and et cetera, et cetera. But even here, it's just amazing what he was able to do. He had the look, he had the great promos. Lex never had a great promo. Orndorff had, the promo, and he understood the business and he wanted to be part of the business. So I think in many ways, Paul could have been that Lex Luger spot if, he peaked a little later.
Excellent point. But he's also, right now, we'll get into it later, but the evolution of Paul Orndorff in Georgia, I could have seen him as a world champion. Within a year. Yeah,
absolutely. You can see that coming, and I've told some of those stories about Orndorff on the Wrestling Stew program and what led to his demise and his return and things of that nature. We'll get to that as time progresses here. But right now, Paul Orndorff has just arrived, and I see nothing but good things for the Mr. Wonderful, future Mr. Wonderful, coming here in Georgia. As we continue on with hour number one, we hear more from Roddy Piper and Gary Hart. Piper with amazingly irate promos here this week. Hart selling the strap match, ripping his jacket down the middle there, swinging a belt wildly. Roddy Piper, between Dick Slater and Roddy Piper, and there's all these live straps around ringside, man, it gets you really interested and invested in what might happen. Somebody's going to lose an eye if they don't lose their hide.
Yeah, especially if they grab the belt the wrong way and they swing the buckle. Somebody can really get hurt.
Yeah, I don't even know if you need the buckle. I mean, just take a strap with one of those guys swinging it. Who knows what's going to happen? I'm sold. I'm there. And I want to see this blindfold thing, baby, anyway, as it is. So we close out hour number 1. We've got one more match. It's Buzz Sawyer teaming with Ole Anderson. That's a scary team over Jose Medina and Keith Larson. We also hear from Ole and Buzz. Ole mocking Brad Armstrong after their altercation, if you will, last week. Remember, Brad put on the hood, as Ole wants to thank Brad for aiding him in his demonstration. So great promo there from heel Ole.
Hey, Ole's Ole, man. That's for as good as Dusty was on the one side, Ole was just as good on the other side. Now, to me, Ole wasn't as good as Roddy Piper, but he was 1B. Ole was just fantastic as a heel.
Yeah, he knew what he was doing out there. There's no doubt about that. He did a tremendous job here with the promo. As we go into hour number 2, Nick Patrick leaves the ring, and Scrappy McGowan taking his place here for hour 2 is our official in the ring. We got another match involving Paul Orndorff, this time over Ed Timms. Unfortunately, Harold didn't record this matchup, so I have no idea how Orndorff goes over. But if it was with, again, the Fisherman Suplex, that would have been pretty damn cool. But something tells me Paul was trying out some different moves here. But so Orndorff gets a match for both hours, gets to shine here. Pretty close together, too. Usually they separate the matches a little more, but good to see Orndorff is here in full throttle. It's full speed ahead for, it looks like, Paul here in the company.
Yeah, and damn Harold missed another match.
Damn it, Harold. As we continue on, we get an interview from Buzz Sawyer, who has an upcoming match here, a 20-minute time limit for TV bout, taking on Wildfire Tommy Rich. And apparently the winner of the matchup will be deemed the number 1 contender to Ron Bass's national heavyweight title. Now, I'm not sure how Buzz Sawyer got this far up the ladder so quickly to be in a number 1 contender match, but here we are, guys. It is, wow, look at this match. You're going to see this one a couple more times down the road, something tells me. Talking about Wildfire Tommy Rich taking on Buzz Sawyer.
You know, thinking back now to this whole Ron Bass title change, I don't understand why Ole did it, because you never really did any big angles with Ron Bass on television the whole time he was the champion. I mean, hey, at least the positive was that if you did see Ron Bass, he had the belt. Unlike when Tommy usually wins, he doesn't bring the belt out with him until it's time to lose it.
Well, the belt was probably laying back there with a big mound of Coke on it or something, waiting to get snorted. So, no, in all honesty, though, it's a really odd run for Ron Bass. You give him the title and then you do nothing with him. I mean, he's been given some TV time to talk. He's been given squash matches, but no really big angle. I mean, Tommy Rich wants his rematch. We saw that at the Omni, but really outside of that, I don't really know. And then here's Tommy again in a number 1 contender match for a title, which he'd already supposedly had his last chance against. So that's where we are, is the Wildfire takes on Buzz Sawyer. Again, we're going to see this again down the road somewhere, something tells me. But here it's just a battle of for the number 1 contendership for the national title. So we get things going. The bell sounds underway. Begins with a feeling out period, leading to extensive arm work here by the Wildfire. Now Buzz attempts to escape multiple times, and a couple of which even work. He escapes, but then Buzz keeps finding himself right back on the mat as Tommy Rich continues to work his arm. Finally, a frustrated Sawyer sees his opportunity as Tommy sets up for a backdrop. Sawyer comes running in, full speed ahead, 100 miles an hour, guys. Running knee or knee lift, something of that to effect. And the momentum of the flying knee into the side of Tommy's face sends Rich across the ring, through the ropes, and spilling out to the studio floor. And based on the force in which Buzz hit him, totally believable.
I'll tell you what, if that wasn't, I won't call it a shoot, but if that wasn't the best bump Tommy Rich ever took, I have to see that bump that was better than that. That, like you just said, totally believable and looked totally like a shoot or a real bump there.
I don't know that Tommy had much of an option but to take that bump. You know, you see guys sometimes and they take those spills to the floor from getting hit in the middle of the ring and it kind of looks hokey. But Buzz did not put on the brakes. I mean, he hit Tommy at 100 miles per hour and out goes Wildfire, who finally pulls himself back up onto the apron. Sawyer, though, going to snap Tommy's neck across the top rope, keeping him outside on the floor. But the Wildfire finally able to climb back inside, where Buzz sends Rich into the lights with a giant backdrop. Wow, did Tommy get up there? Two of Tommy's best bumps I've ever seen in this one match. and Buzz Sawyer part of both of them. As Buzz, though, going to miss a knee drop, and Tommy wildfires up, like what I did there with his own backdrop on Buzz Sawyer. Buzz going to beg off in the corner, but Tommy going to town on the offense, locking in his patented sleeper hold. Going to be night-night time here, perhaps for Buzz Sawyer. And as we see Sawyer slowly begin to slink down to the mat, we take a commercial break. We get 10 minutes of action between these two guys, and the last couple minutes of really high-impact stuff. And then we go into a commercial break. Perfect timing as Tommy locks on one of his more favorite moves he uses.
Yeah, and that would have been a great ending to the match, too.
And so you're left wondering and staying tuned through the commercial break. What happened? Did Tommy get the win? What happened with the sleeper hold? Well, back from break, a host of baby faces huddled around Tommy Rich outside on the floor, as Gordon Solie informs us that Roddy Piper had actually ran in and attacked Tommy Rich, whipped his back raw, says Gordon, while Buzz Sawyer held Tommy down for the beatdown. So an irate Tommy Rich going to join Gordon Solie here for a quick promo to show off the welts on his back from Roddy Piper there with the strap, as an angry Wildfire promises revenge. So I kind of was fooled here. I thought maybe we were going into the Buzz Sawyer-Tommy Rich feud out of this, but instead, well, Buzz did play a part in Roddy's beating of Tommy, but at the same time, we can't get that kind of physical violence on TBS here in 1982, and they had the angle plan, so they do it during the commercial break.
And the other time, Gordon would have said, we're going to keep the cameras rolling in case something happens, and this is one of the times that they didn't. But what an outstanding match. 10 minutes of pure action, and you will probably never see Tommy Rich wrestle a match on TV like that again. That was just fantastic. And you now understand why Buzz Sawyer and Tommy Rich became such a great feud, because the two guys just had magic together.
Yeah, Tommy obviously working well there with the Mad Dog. Not that Buzz Sawyer was leading Tommy or forcing Tommy to have a good match. Tommy was certainly the veteran here, but at the same time, I don't know if it was respect or just, I can't let this young guy show me up, but Tommy Rich came to work, and it was a hell of a 10 minutes of wrestling there on TV before the angle goes down, and we're left to our imaginations just how violent the beating was as Tommy shows off the welts across his back as we lead into the Omni show. Another Spike Huber match here in hour number 2 over Tony Russo. We don't have that, so we continue on with an interview featuring Kevin Sullivan, who, much like Ray Stevens in recent interview, addressing the 2-on-1s, the 4-on-2s, the et ceteras here, but specifically the 2-on-1 we just saw here with Buzz Sawyer and Roddy Piper, what they did to Tommy Rich. Kevin Sullivan says, it doesn't make them men, it makes them dogs, attacking in packs. Kevin Sullivan plans to muzzle Buzz Sawyer tomorrow night at the Omni. So referring to Buzz Sawyer as a dog and muzzling this dog, if you will, Buzz Sawyer.
Laying the groundwork for the Mad Dog nickname that will eventually come along.
There you go. Absolutely. Kevin Sullivan, once a friend and an ally of Buzz Sawyer. Now we've seen him go around all of the other cities, and now they're coming to the Omni one-on-one. Looking forward to that in just a moment. But first, a couple more matches here this week on TV, including Kevin Sullivan over Jim Dalton and the tag team champions Super Destroyer and John Studd defeating Ken Timms and Keith Larson. And what would be an episode of TV without a couple of promos here to close the show as well? Once again, a hard sell from Roddy Piper and Gary Hart. Gary Hart vowing to wear his 3-piece suit in the 6-man tag tomorrow night because he claims nobody is even going to touch him. Interesting words there from the manager, the Playboy Gary Hart. We also hear from the champions, tag champs, John Studd, Super Destroyer, and how great they are as the national champions. They state nobody can beat them as they run down Mr. Wrestling number 2, one of their opponents at the Omni. So we got the tag team champions, and maybe John Studd will finally show up for an Omni card, but interesting way to close out the show, kind of a underneath match, if you will, at the Omni involving the tag team champions. But, man, we've got some hard sell here with the big 6-man tag for sure this week.
Absolutely. And you know what else? I know that when I've ripped on Gary Hart a lot because I never cared for Gary Hart. I thought Gary Hart was boring. However, watching this now 40 years later, and the stuff, especially since Piper has arrived and Piper got involved with Gary Hart around January or so.
Mm-hmm.
I've enjoyed Gary Hart stuff.
Do you think it's Roddy Piper, or do you think it's just actually Gary?
I think Piper's bringing out the best in Gary Hart.
Well, Gary's forced to play a little bit of a different character when he's out there with Roddy, because you got to play off of Roddy, right? Too, but I'm not giving Piper all the credit there. No, I'm 100% with you. I feel like Gary Hart was always hit or miss with me in any territory he was in. A lot of times, just completely miss. I wasn't into Gary Hart at all in the later Dallas runs or anything else he did later on, or even when he was with Muta and things like that. Gary was okay, but I felt like there were certain things, aspects and things that he did that I didn't necessarily care for, even in that 89 run. Now, some of the stuff he was doing here earlier, again in Dallas, this early stuff in the early 80s, again, hit or miss. I liked some of the ideas he was coming up with as a booker. I liked some of the ways he was trying to go with promos, but I just can never classify Gary as one of the greatest top, say Mount Rushmore. I don't know that I can do that, in my personal opinion. But I could see why other people would if they were into his shtick. But also at the same time, I didn't get to see Gary Hart Florida 1970s. Maybe he was, the greatest to do it back in that time frame. So it's really hard for me to base it off of anything prior to what exists here in the 80s of Gary Hart. But I'm with you here. I did not want to see any Gary Hart, prior to this run here in 82, as far as his Georgia stuff goes. But I'm digging it, and it works for me. As we continue on, we've got a couple of results here closing out this week's regional wrestling. April 18th, earlier in the day, Columbus, Georgia, Municipal Auditorium. Afternoon show, going to see Brad Armstrong over Ricky Harris. Super D and John Studd defeating Dick Slater and Leroy Brown. Wow. Wrestling 2 over Ron Bass by DQ. Tommy Rich defeating Great Kabuki by disqualification. And in a Boston street fight, the Boston Battler, Kevin Sullivan over Buzz Sawyer.
Yeah, we haven't seen one of those Boston street fights since Sullivan beat Kern last year. So it's nice to see that match back.
Yeah, it is. And it's, Sullivan, the babyface now, he has his own gimmick match, and they get to shine here in one of the big matches in Columbus, Georgia. And they'll fight again here later in the Omni, but without the gimmick match. So we'll see maybe a different result when we get to that. But we move on to the Omni in Atlanta in the evening here on April the 18th. Tom Pritchard battling Eddie Mansfield to a draw. Brad Armstrong over Ricky Harris for the 80,000th time, it feels like. National Tag Team Champions Super Destroyer and Big John Studd in full effect, scoring a win over Mr. Wrestling 2 and Jerry Briscoe. Interesting. They never really built to that, so I don't know if that's who they found. And they said, well, we got Jerry. We'll bring him in. Kevin Sullivan taking Buzz Sawyer to a double count out. Again, they're just starting their story in the Omni, so we get the double count out here. We saw that in the other cities prior.
Well, Jerry probably came up to get his payout since him and Jack still had points in the promotion. He probably had to come up every so often just to make sure they got paid.
And he wanted to count the seats, man. That's what he was doing. Good call there. Yeah. So I forgot, he does have some points here. So he probably does want to come look at the business a little bit. I'll do it, Jack. You hang out at the body shop. As also on the card, Leroy Brown challenging the national heavyweight champion, Ron Bass. Leroy going to go over here by disqualification, so Bass will retain. And here it is, the big double main event. 2 big gimmick matches, including 6-man tag. Dick Slater, Bob Armstrong, and Tommy Rich defeating the Great Kabuki, Roddy Piper, and Gary Hart in that Canadian Lumberjack strap match.
I would have loved to see a tape of that. Maybe someday it'll become unearthed.
You never know. They keep popping out these Omni shows. Another one just came out less than a week ago. So you never really know. As we close out, remember what Ole Anderson said on TV. He said it himself, the Minnesota Loggers blindfold match, finally in Ole's favor. But once again, it is Dusty Rhodes scoring the win over Ole Anderson. Ole just can't seem to get the big win over the American Dream. Dusty getting the win here in the blindfold match. And something tells me that finish was entertaining as all hell.
And you know what's great? Ole, of course, he was the booker. He understood the business, and he always kept Dusty strong. Eddie was able to keep himself strong at the same time by usually doing the honors of Dusty.
Right. No, yeah, you want to keep Dusty happy, but you want to keep the fans happy. And if Dusty's on his way again, if we don't see Dusty's been at the last several Omni cards in a row, so I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Dusty for a couple of Omni cards coming up. So it only makes sense. And then maybe we escalate this, continue on. I don't know. I didn't look ahead In fact, I had to look back just to remind myself of this, what research I did in this particular episode of Regional Wrestling. But speaking of this episode, it comes to a conclusion, Jamie. 3 weeks of TV, 2 Omni cards. We covered a lot here this week. About 3 weeks of Georgia wrestling here in 1982.
Well, we do got a lot of catching up to do, Ray. So we needed an easy episode, I guess you could call it.
Yes, I wouldn't call it an easy out because nothing's easy when we're sitting here. And, it's fun, but it's not easy to go back and find all the research and compare notes and things like that with different results that you find online. And we watch the TV and take some notes there, but it's always a fun time, to see where we're going next. And Jamie, you kind of have an idea of where things are going, and I do too, but probably not anywhere near to your level. But I look forward to seeing where we go after this.
Yeah, it's just going to pick up from here now through Christmas. It's just going to skyrocket to the action that we're going to see in Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. The Brandon Bull is here. Paul Orndorff has arrived, so he's going to be feature focused moving forward. Can't wait for that. But for this week, guys, we're getting ready to wrap it up. I want to thank you again, Jamie, for coming back here to Regional Wrestling after the hiatus that I was essentially forced to take. But it's great to be back and have the WrestleCopia programs back up and running. And speaking of WrestleCopia programs, Jamie, I have it on good authority. You're appearing on multiple programs here across the world of WrestleCopia. Why don't you tell the people a little bit about it?
Yes, you can catch me when I'm not here with Ray doing 1982 Georgia Championship Wrestling. You can catch me again with Ray on Ray's Ultimate Tier Patreon.
The Ultimate Tier.
The Ultimate Tier, when Ray and I cover 1983 Southwest Championship Wrestling and 1982 Mid-South Wrestling on Regional Wrestling Unreal. So Ray and I sit down, watch those shows. We have a blast. Of course, just about every week you can catch me on the other ship. If we're not talking current product wrestling, or even recently we've recorded some old school shows that'll be coming up probably in January. We also cover other topics on the Other Ship podcast with Drew Samuels, Michael Herrick, and William Merriweather. We recently just had a show that came out the other week about our favorite 1980 movies, and that was a blast to do. We have some more projects coming up, such as our Christmas show is going to be about Christmas candies this year. So on the Other Ship, we go all different directions. It's just not wrestling. We talk about whatever people want to hear about. And then also, I recently recorded with Bob Smith. So I will be on Bob Smith's Outdated Wrestling Hour. Bob and I will sit down and we're going to discuss guys that never won any of the world heavyweight titles. And I'll give you a spoiler. We discuss Paul Orndorff on that show, and how Paul Orndorff probably should have got a run with the NWA and the WWF titles at some time in the 80s, or at least one of them. So, hey, that's due out pretty soon. Probably already dropped by the time.
Yep, by the time this goes up, that it will be out. People can go check that out right now. Part of the Outdated Wrestling Hour with Bob Smith, bringing Jammie Ward onto the show. Looking forward to listening to that one myself, Jamie. Can't wait to hear what you guys come up with there. And of course, the Other Ship doing not just wrestling, but other things on the Other Ship, including, we talk about the Feuds, but they also talk. I'm looking forward to that 80s movie one, so I can't wait to get into that one. But guys, I encourage you to check out all those shows, and of course, Regional Wrestling Unreal, part of that Ultimate Tier over at
Ultimate Tier.
There it is, patreon.com/WrestleCopia. We've got all those shows back up and running. Coliseum Videocast already up. We've got a new Pro Racer Academy videocast coming this week, so stay tuned for that. And everything's slowly finding its way back into the Patreon world and the WrestleCopia world. But for this week, guys, we're going to wrap it up. I got Steve Crawford coming back here very shortly to do more of the ICW. I can't wait to get back into Paphos ICW with Steve, and he's always a fun guest to have. He's a great time every time, and so I'm looking forward to that, and so much more coming in the weeks to come. So stay tuned. I want to thank everybody for their patience while I was away, but we are back, and we are up and running, and I can't wait to see where we go next. Jamie, thank you so much for being here, and we'll be back soon, guys. More regional wrestling on the way.
My pleasure, and happy holidays, everyone.